Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and offer my respects to the elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here this morning. Before I start, I want to tell you a bit about the EPA, and I'm sure many of you in the room have heard of us, partnered with us and even been regulated by us. But for those of you who may be new to the waste industry and looking at Greg's attendance list, each year this conference keeps growing and the list of people or names I start not to recognise, we're actually as a sector drawing more and more people into our industry, which is fantastic. The key role of the New South Wales EPA is to protect the environment and the community. We do this by being a leader, a partner and protector. We lead in protecting our air, waterways, land and health of the community for the future. For example, we now use things like surveillance and tracking technologies to track illegal dumping of hazardous waste. We also work with communities all across the state, across government and in business to reduce their impacts on the environment. For the last year, we've been training staff in major hardware stores like Bunnings on hazards involved with treated timber and lead. Those retail staff are now able to pass this information on to their customers, along with a brochure from the EPA. Finally, we hold people and organisations to account through licensing, monitoring, regulation and enforcement. We have a 24/7 hotline that anyone can use if they are worried about a pollution incident in their local area, and we investigate all calls and take firm action. Now, waste-related issues have consistently been identified by the community as an environmental issue of concern, and this is commonly repeated in the surveys the EPA does with the community. We know about 10 million tonnes of material enters the New South Wales waste system each year, and that waste management is an important part of our economy. The ABS estimates that waste management services in Australia are worth about $9.5 billion each year. And if we take into account that New South Wales generates about a third of the Australian gross domestic product, then the value of waste management services to the New South Wales economy can be estimated at about $3 billion annually, with about half of that coming and growing from the resource recovery sector. While a large percentage of this material is recycled, this still represents a significant amount of material moving through the economy as well as physically through our neighbourhoods by road and rail. Waste collection, transport, processing, recovery and disposal have a major impact on existing infrastructure and increases in the demand for new infrastructure. Overlay this with New South Wales' expected population of 9.9 million in 2036, and talking about an efficient waste collection, transport, treatment system becomes very important for the state. Now, it was nice to see Albert and Richard's talk that we're all sort of, heading in the right direction. I was always worried when you're the third speaker thinking they're going to come up with something quite contrary. So it was good to see that the things we're doing in New South Wales and in Australia more generally, we're all in the same sort of policy bandwidth, which is great. New South Wales has got clear policies and targets to direct sustainable and innovative waste management. As you all know, in December 2014 we released the New South Wales Waste and Resource Recovery Strategy, which sets clear directions for a range of priority areas over the next 7 years. Some of the goals we've set ourselves is to avoid and reduce waste generation. And we've set ourselves, I think, an ambitious target is we want to reduce the amount of waste generated per capita in New South Wales by 2021. I need your help on that one. That's actually my performance agreement, and I keep explaining to my boss that's actually going to be really hard to do. But it's in there. We want to increase recycling. We want to increase the recycling of municipal solid waste and commercial and industrial waste to 70% and construction waste to 80%. And so again, to Albert's numbers, we're in sort of the same type of ballpark. We want to increase waste diverted from landfill to divert more than 75% of material that's generated away from landfill. We want to manage problem waste better, and this is the feedback we've had from the community, and we're committed to establish 86 drop-off facilities around New South Wales. And I'm thrilled to say that we've already exceeded this target with the establishment of 101 facilities planned for across New South Wales. We plan to reduce illegal dumping by 30%, especially in those very high peri-urban areas around Sydney, Newcastle and the Central Coast. And finally, we've committed to, and we currently are reducing the volume of litter in our environment. You may have noticed recently on TV our Hey Tosser advertisements on trains, buses, and television and social media. And we also dropped 40 bottles with GPS trackers in waterways across the state to track the journey that litter takes when it is thrown anywhere other than in your bin. And it's interesting, the social media take-up of that little story about the GPS trackers and bottles has been absolutely astounding. And the journey some of those bottles are taken, which has been put on our Facebook page, is quite interesting. A bottle dropped in Rose Bay, for those from Sydney, will go out the heads and then down to Cronulla and then landed at a beach at Cronulla and picked up by a park ranger in the national park down there. So it just shows you that, you know, we all litter. When you put it out in the environment, in the marine environment, we'll travel. The EPA, as you know, is also leading the rollout of the state's largest ever anti-litter initiative, the New South Wales Container Deposit Scheme. At last year's conference, we were putting the final touches on the government's announcement of a 10-cent container deposit scheme. And at the time, it was pretty frustrating because we knew what it was, but we couldn't say anything about it. That announcement was actually on the 9th of May last year, so it was only sort of 51 weeks ago. So commencing from 1 December this year, the New South Wales CDS will offer a 10-cent refund on all eligible drink containers purchased in New South Wales. And eligible containers include most containers between 150 mils and 3 litres. And this is an exciting initiative for New South Wales that will help reduce the 160 million, that's right, 160 million drink containers littered in our environment each year, and will also provide communities with a unique fundraising opportunity. The EPA is working very hard to get the scheme off the ground, and I know you're all looking forward to the start of it. I think you'll agree that we've set some ambitious waste and recycling targets, and together with our partners in industry, government and community, we are well placed to achieve these targets. Now, to achieve these targets, we knew we needed to invest in innovative business approaches and to stimulate investment in new processing technology and capacity across New South Wales. We also knew that we needed to align strategy, policy, funding and delivery, and again, my cockles on my heart warmed when Albert had that slide up of it, so you've got to look at it as a whole system. And I think we've come a long way in New South Wales in delivering that consistent, well thought out approach. So the day is almost here where Waste Less, Recycle More Mark 1 is at a close. In February 2013, the date of 30 June 2017 seemed a long way away. It is time to draw our collective breath, take a step back and look at what's happened since the EPA came here in 2013. All of us, EPA and others, talked then about what would we do and what could we do with an unprecedented funding commitment by government. And I think I said at the time that Waste Less was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And now we can look back on 4 years of effort, imagination, frustration and achievement, and we can all look back proudly on what we've collectively achieved. Well, whatever else you take away from me being here, I want you to understand that the collective effort that you've been part of and the opportunity that still exists. I want you to accept my thanks and the thanks of all the EPA waste team for your work in transforming waste management and for taking up the challenge we've set. Waste Less, Recycle More would have only been a one-off program, a thing to reminisce over a glass of wine, were it not for the results that we've been able to demonstrate to government. We have been able to prove the value of government investment in the waste sector and in behaviour change. The ability to demonstrate to government, and particularly to my very lovely friends in Treasury, the value of Waste Less More was a reason why the EPA was able to successfully argue for the extension of the Waste Less More program on the back of your efforts and commitment. And again, I thank you. Before I talk about what you've achieved through the first tranche of Waste Less, Recycle More, and just as more importantly, I want to sketch out a little bit where we go next. We stand on the shoulders of Waste Less 1. In key ways, we have built a platform. In many ways, we've built a key platform to drive forward again. We now have clever technology and robust data collection systems that give us real-time information on recycling material flows through Waste Locate and the levy and waste data reporting system called WARP. We now track waste from the metropolitan levy area interstate. We are using GPS trackers on trucks to keep tabs on the movements and restrain illegal behaviour. The power of this information is not only in better regulation, but in better understanding waste flows, and then feeding that information into better regulation and programs. We know a whole lot more about all of you. I mean that in the nicest possible way. The EPA has invested significant funds into understanding you as a waste industry and what you need and what works. Not only that, we also know more about you as individuals who are part of the New South Wales community. We have a body of research on illegal dumping behaviours at curbside and elsewhere. We know about you as smokers and litterers, or maybe as litter prevention champions. We know more about what you do with your food waste, but we want to know more. So I encourage all of you to sign up to the New South Wales EPA's Great Food Waste Study, where we want 1,000 households to collect data in the kitchen on their food waste. So please come and see us at our stand. We know what you think and do about recycling, and about how you might think about returning your drink containers. We know a whole lot more about the waste from your business that your business generates and what you need to help reduce it. We know that you think about and how you use community recycling centres. Across all of our programs, I think we can say we now know with more definition and detail all of this research that we have, all of the feedback you have given us, again gives us the power and opportunity going forward to be more effective. We can tailor our programs to meet the needs of specific groups rather than the whole. And I think that's been the big change. Probably back 10 years, we're collectively thinking of the problem at a too broad a level, and we're now getting down at a much better granularity. So in the next round of Waste Less initiative, our challenge is to harness this information to deliver and design clever, effective programs that continue to drive change or secure the change for the future. Over the past few months, I've been looking at the program business plans for each of the waste programs, and I'm seeing that learning is translating into action into our programs for the next 4 years. And now to see what we've achieved over the past 5. So Waste Less funded 65 infrastructure projects, and it's expected, these numbers haven't been public before, it is expected that 2.26 billion of revenue will be generated across the life of these projects. We'll deliver $465 million in environmental benefits and $1.12 billion in net social benefits. And that was from that original investment we got from government of the 465. It's also estimated that the continuation of Waste Less will contribute to the Premier's priority of creating 150,000 new jobs by 2019. We estimate that continued investment will deliver 1,500 new jobs by 2020, adding to the already 845 jobs created. We have leveraged at least $2.40 for every dollar investment by government, and I was interested to see Richard's numbers on the investment leverage, and we found a bit the same. There was a predominant range around that $1 to $5 mark, and then a couple of projects at the big end, so it was nice to see our data was sort of similar. As of July 2016, almost $300 million has been awarded in grants, including $120 million to local councils, $85 million in infrastructure, $32 million for problem waste, $6.8 million for regional landfills, and $28 million to businesses. Being able to report on the outcomes definitely helps secure the funding for the next round. Now, last year the government announced an extension of Waste Less until 30 June 2021. A lesson learnt there, it's actually going to come up, that time's going to come up much faster than it has previously, with an additional $337 million available. If you sit for a moment and reflect on what this means, that brings the government's total commitment to waste and recycling to more than $802 million over 9 years. This funding works to meet one of the EPA's strategic objectives of having innovative waste management for New South Wales. This latest $337 million investment in waste and recycling will continue to transform the waste sector and deliver the environmental and economic benefits called for by our citizens. As part of the process of seeking an extension, we reviewed every single program to make sure it was fit for purpose and where we could improve. And as a result, the general funding theme has not significantly changed, but rather evolved. We didn't want to shake the program unnecessarily, but rather design for an evolution rather than a revolution. I think it's rare in this day and age in the public policy space to have a consistent long-term plan with consistent delivery. Waste Less 2 includes grants for local councils, for business, for industry and the community, again delivered by the EPA and the Environmental Trust. It includes the $70 million for local government, $5 million for landfill consolidation, $8 million for regional coordination and strategy for voluntary regional waste groups, and $4 million for regional management of waste in Aboriginal communities. There's a big chunk of 48 million again for resource recovery expansion, 25 million for major resource recovery infrastructure, 14 million for audits, education and support programs, and I think that's where you're going to see the program of Wasteless now blossom, that we've moved from the infrastructure part to the community engagement education part. $5 million for a recycling innovation fund, and $4 million to fund the ongoing work of the heads of Asbestos Coordination Authority. But there's one program I'd like to single out for mention, and it's the Sustainable Waste Management in Aboriginal Communities. The genesis of this program comes from the work that Anne Prince and Waste Aid had started, and we should thank Anne and her team for bringing this issue to the fore. Danielle Carter and her team are working with partners across government, such as Aboriginal Affairs, and outside of government, the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. This new program is building upon pilots undertaken over the last 18 months with Waste Aid, and is underpinned by the principles that reflect the government's direction for both waste management and working with Aboriginal peoples. By engaging community in the design and development of local solutions, maximising the opportunity for employment of Aboriginal people at every stage, sustain change in waste management beyond the period of the program, and having a strong evidence base to inform decisions. With our partners, we want to deliver long-term sustainable change to improve waste outcomes in Aboriginal communities by providing a safe and clean physical environment and reduce risk to human health, to reduce litter and waste, for community members to have confidence in and ownership of waste management practices, and to build those local relationships and partnerships for a sustained, effective waste management system. There'll be more on this great initiative later in the year as the project further develops and evolves. So let's look forward to the future. Waste management at all levels needs to be front of mind in planning. Every agency, consent authority, community and facility operator needs to be on the same page about this and be prepared to plan ahead and manage the impacts of their operations. Planning for future needs to reflect population, density changes, urban development and changing waste streams is critical. Waste infrastructure, including landfills, transfer station, composting facilities, in our view are critical infrastructure. And this is why we have invested time in looking forward to build a picture of the future waste needs of the state. And Robbie Beale and Jeff Isaac and the infrastructure team at the EPA will talk later more about this tomorrow in part of their presentation. But increasing population growth and urban development means we need to think differently. The projected numbers are stark. New South Wales population is expected to grow to 9.9 million people by 2036, and the amount of waste generated in New South Wales in 20 years is expected to be 159% higher than it was in 2002. Increasing population density means that the development of new waste facilities are likely to be closer to residential and commercial areas. We are working closely with the Greater Sydney Commission to ensure that, as part of the development of the district plans, waste and resource recovery facilities are viewed as essential services in strategic planning and in strategic decisions for particularly Sydney's urban growth. The challenge then is to manage this population growth and associated waste impacts so that the community and the environment are protected, and that New South Wales resource recovery is key to achieving this challenge. Landfill diversion and increasing recovery is also complex, with new materials emerging for disposal, technologies and devices, new challenges such as continuing changes in electronic devices, battery technology, and the forecasted challenges in solar panels are all emerging issues. The emerging energy from waste industry in Australia is always going to face its challenges, and as we've seen in the New South Wales context, there's been a parliamentary inquiry called into energy from waste, and that will need the waste industry to bring its smarts and its information and its data to that table, so the decision makers can get to see the legitimate role energy for waste can play. Product stewardship, as we've talked about this morning, also has a key role to play, but it presents challenges, and future schemes must have inbuilt flexibility. For example, materials change within the same stream. This is what's happening with the National Computer and Television Recycling Scheme, where cathode ray TVs were the mainstream, but the change to flat screen, LED and LCD TVs, we're now seeing a different waste type, and we're now facing new challenges in the processing of those materials. So over the next 2 days, you will hear from the EPA team on the projects that they are working on and that we're very proud of, and the things that are coming up next, such as infrastructure needs, better ways to deal with multi-unit dwellings, organics recycling, illegal dumping and litter. So I don't want to steal their thunder, but please go and see their talks. Now, we don't certainly want to rest on our laurels. Government has given us a great opportunity to transform waste and resource recovery for the betterment of the citizens and the environment of New South Wales. The EPA teams are working hard to finalise their business plans so that we can move between the two phases of waste less, recycle more as seamlessly as possible. So please stay connected with us. Over the coming weeks, there'll be more information being made available across a range of programs. Now, what's really on the agenda for us, I was trying to write at the end of this, the things that are on our desk at the moment is the regulatory reforms that we were talking about in late 2016 about driving greater resource recovery, particularly by the C&D sector. And again, Albert's talk was quite refreshing in that we're all trying to grapple with those challenges. The big piece we're doing at the moment is getting before government the data on the infrastructure needs analysis, so we can get that into the policy mix for any discussions around the district plans. The rollout of container deposits, as you imagine, is certainly front and centre inside the EPA at the moment. And what's going to come out very shortly, and we got good feedback when we did it last time, is we're about to publish the 4-year rolling plan of the funding calendar. So you'll see for all the projects, for all the possible funding streams, a grant calendar going forward for the next 4 years, so you can work out your timing, how it works for you. We've tried to build in the timing of the grant programs to fit into the local government planning and budget cycles. So that planning, that sort of grant calendar will come out in the next couple of weeks, and please get hold of it and then make the most of those opportunities. So if you want to find out anything more about what's happening at the EPA, please drop into our booth and leave us your details and we'll get back to you. Finally, it's great to see policy alignment with industry on the need for national harmonisation. At the moment in the EPA, we're working on new approaches to have greater harmonisation across a whole range of issues across the jurisdictions on such things as food waste, and there was a meeting in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago where all the states got together with industry, convened by the Commonwealth and Anthony Pratt, to look at food waste. So, and this is the agenda about reducing food waste by half by 2030. We're also looking at the things around levies, proximity principles, infrastructure, standards. So where the jurisdictions are certainly hearing from industry around the need for this greater harmonisation, and there's a lot of work happening in the background for that to occur. So finally, a big thank you for your positive contribution with the EPA, and let's make the next phase of Waste Less, Recycle More as successful as the first. Thank you very much.